Hi, my name's Keith Kelly, and I'm going to talk about content and language integrated learning for the language classroom. I've prepared a number of slides and some clips which I'll show along the way, and this is a recording of the slides and the material that was part of a presentation for the Bulgarian English Teachers Association conference in Sofia in 2015. We'll look at a number of things. We'll look at the three dimensions of CLIL, content and language integrated learning, namely language skills and concepts. We'll talk about how a good CLIL language classroom puts the focus predominantly on the student. We'll look at a number of resources. We'll also look at the role of products in the learning process. And then we'll finish with the question of following up and networks for teachers who are interested in taking it further based on what we've discussed today. This is my home in the Rodopi mountain. I quite like to show it whenever I'm meeting a new group, so here we are. It's in the village of Tarkalyan. We're there whenever it's warm. If you are in the region, come and knock. We'll put the kettle on or the barbecue depending on the weather. This is the English-German high school in Plovdiv, where I worked for many years and where I gained a lot of experience working with the curriculum in other languages, mainly English, but these grammar schools in Bulgaria offer these subjects, science, geography, history and other subjects through the medium of many languages. The English-German school obviously does that through English and German, but there is Spanish, French, Russian and other languages too, offering the curriculum in this language. This is a typical prep class, je class, and I worked with this prep class over the course of a year and many other prep classes, and these children have 18 hours a week of English for a whole school year. They graduate a year older than regular kids. But you can imagine what that means for their language preparation when they go on to do their subject curriculum through English as a foreign language. They go from sometimes 0 learners to first certificate or above within the space of this intensive language course for a year. They're very, very lucky kids. And in my classrooms, I tried to take from what was in the content curriculum. And I learned a lot about the kind of things subject teachers do and pinch those ideas for the purpose of developing my students' language. And here you can see children doing an activity which is a speed test, which I'm going to show. You can see the children there are they have a weighted measure which they have to catch, and on the measure are described fractions of seconds, and it's basically from a physics curriculum area which gets young learners looking at safety and speed correlation to do with road accidents and deaths. And in terms of language, of course, this activity, when all the children are doing it in the classroom at the same time, turns into a survey. And I think for English teachers looking at bringing in the subject curriculum into their language lessons, survey work is a very good place to start, whether it's measuring speed or other aspects of their children's daily lives related to an aspect of the content curriculum. Here, speed and reaction from the physics curriculum turns into a survey in the language curriculum, which gets the kids looking at what the fractions of seconds were as a whole group. They do it 2 or 3 or 5 times, and they get average numbers of speed reaction. And they can see as a snapshot how fast reactions are in their group. It's interesting to look at definitions of project work. Here we've got a reference to research assignments at university. More independent work leading to a written report for the students. I think in my take on project work focuses on the fun aspect. The language learning, I think, benefits a lot from having activities which are fun for young people to do. It's also focused on the students, which I mentioned in our opening agenda. The learning comes from investigating the children themselves, and the language comes from children themselves. Project work needs to be curriculum linked in some way, so that there are connections between what's going on in the language lesson and the subject areas. Integrated skills, you've got the kids are talking to each other in their own language and in English, they're listening to each other, they're reading, they're looking at their own data, interpreting data. There's a lot of integration of many skills in there. It's very, very structured, and it's also product-led. The children have to come up with a set of data to represent their own classroom in this example context. But the same applies to other project contexts, which we'll see with the other examples I'll show. So what we've got really is a challenge for language teachers to look at what's going on in the areas of the subject curriculum that their own children are studying alongside their language lessons. Have a look, have a look at your national curriculum guidelines for different subjects. Look at what the resources are. Look at examples of work. If you don't have them available, go and knock on your colleague's door and find out what goes on in their subject, what goes on in science, for example, which is what I did. There are a lot of websites you can go and explore, such as the Biotechnology and Biological Science Research Council website. Produces a lot of materials for secondary age teachers of children secondary age and primary age, which you can freely download and explore. It takes a bit of time to browse around, but it's worthwhile. All the subject areas have these national and international networks and websites that have resources for teachers to download. Explore them, find out what you can, and pinch it. This is an example again from science, where a group of 11-year-olds in Argentina, 11, 12-year-olds are looking at genetics, and they've been given the challenge to create their own GM person. They've got all the ingredients, all the proteins, the paired proteins to create their own Frankenstein, if you like. And then they have to present it. So they work together to choose what the combinations of base pairs are going to be to build their person, and then they colour, they name, they characterise, and they present like this. Okay, and you can see the children there do a short collaborative presentation that was given to them as an instruction. They have to divide up what they say between the members of their group. They did that very well. There's some questions with the language, but I don't think that's important in this situation. It was a very short workshop where they didn't have a huge amount of time to focus on the language prep. They did really well in creating and presenting their Frankenstein, called Jimmy, in a more position where the teacher has more time to give support to the children. That support could be in the form of language like this that can be given to students as a handout while they're building their Frankenstein's monster, or on a poster in the classroom, to talk about description of a person's face and inherited characteristics. This is a CLIL instrument, a language support instrument that's been embedded into a content activity, which is juniors, early secondary kids learning about genetic heredity. What do you think this is? A lot of colleagues say it's some sort of jelly. Sometimes colleagues think it's some sort of growth in a laboratory. In actual fact, what you're looking at is the taste buds on a human tongue. And a wonderful science activity I've seen, which is again a survey. It all comes down to exploring the children in the classroom in science in many of these situations. It's a survey where the children look at the number of papillae taste buds they've got on their tongue in a controlled area, which is a hole punched clean piece of paper, using food colouring on their tongue, which stains the taste buds. And in good natural light, maybe with a magnifying glass, you can actually count them. And there are low tasters, medium tasters, and super tasters. And again, the children can create a presentation of that data for their classroom. It's a wonderful, fun activity that gets the kids learning about difference and variation in genetics, but also describing their group of the population group of their classroom to share with other classrooms, for example. And that brings me to Science Across the World, which you can get to if you're interested at scienceacross.org. A bank of resources for general science projects, just like this, looking at genetics in our lives, looking at healthy eating, looking at how we deal with waste, looking at science at home, cosmetics, and many other general science projects which are perfect for language development. At the heyday of the project, there was a database of contacts, which is not available now through the website, but you can find contacts in many other ways. You can use the FACTWorld website to find contacts, the Forum for Cross-Curriculum Teaching, and there's a list of sites you might want to follow up at the end of the slides, where you can find partners to share your students' work with if you're interested. And the other focus was it's IT based, using the internet and for research, and using PowerPoint for presentation work and so on. And I'm going to show an example from What Did You Eat? Ice cream in Europe, who eats the most? I'll give you a short pause to think about that while you think about that, and then the answers are here. And again, what we've got is a bit of data for a population group, which is the European context. And your children, if you ask them this question before you show them this kind of data, they'll have all sorts of stereotypes in their minds. Many children say Russia in Eastern Europe, associate ice cream with Russian ice cream. In Western Europe, a lot of young people will say Italy, associate ice cream with Italy, like the cornetto from a famous English advert. And you can then begin to question where these stereotypes come from. Adverts, for example, holidays, personal experience, and they can look at the language of most, least. So look at larger groups, smaller groups, most common, the average number, and so on in the data set that's there. And this is what my children did in the prep class in the English-German school. They investigated their own eating habits through a food and drink diary, and you can see that here we've got the time of day, the activities they were doing, the sweets, snacks, meals eaten, where they ate, and who chose the food. All that information is put into a poster that they've put in a newsletter to send to partners in other countries. The whole production of it is a very great group activity that develops a lot of collaborative skills, not to mention the language and the content as well. The group work is one of these three dimensions that I mentioned in our agenda. A procedural skill, being able to collaborate in a group, is a very important skill that a lot of young people find hard to develop throughout their school years. Statistics carried out on what business tells us about young people when they go to them for jobs is exactly that. They lack a lot of these teamwork skills. Do CLIL projects in your language lessons. Develop those skills for your young people. So here we've got a summary of what the project work skills incorporate. We've got research work, finding out about an area of their lives, whether it's healthy eating or genetics, gathering data, presenting data, dealing with data, and then presentation works, whether it's a poster, a PowerPoint, making a little video to summarize their their results. And within the topic of heredity, we've got the research into variation of hair, eye, skin colour, height, earlobes attached or not attached, middle finger hair, and whether or not you can roll your tongue like this. Some people can, some people can't. You're genetically programmed. And in your children's group, that variation is very, very interesting for students to investigate and present. Building stuff. Again, I'm very motivated to get my children in my school creating stuff, and the processes, the procedural skills for building stuff, I think actually are more important in many ways than the conceptual skills and the language skills. The procedural skills create links to the concepts in the language. In many ways, I think a lot of curriculum guidelines overlook at the cost of the quality of the learning that children have. And here we've got design, build, test, observe, present. A very simple 5-step sequence for rocket building. This is in the Urania Science Museum in Berlin. Obviously you need a rocket launcher to do that, but you can do it with an empty Coca-Cola bottle where the kids jump on it and the rocket's been attached to the end of the Coca-Cola bottle, and they still fly, perhaps not 10-20 meters into the air, but you can still look at the design of the rocket, the style, wings, fins, length, weight, color, name, and trajectory. All of those things are great for developing language and improving on all of those aspects for a second trial or a third trial until they get it as good as possible, which is a very scientific approach. Here's an example of a sheet which I produced to help kids look at how they build their rockets, test their rockets and improve their rockets, as well as those rockets of their classmates. Slightly different area of the science curriculum. Again, it's difficult to make dynamic activity out of this, but I asked colleagues what they think is going on here. Oops, but it's not connected, so let me show. Here it is. Let me open it from here. This one. I'll have a look at this one. It's going for it. Okay. So if you've had a chance to think about that, what's going on? In actual fact, those children are making hair gel and shampoo in their small groups. They've got all the ingredients, they've got the measuring instruments, the mixing instruments, and they've got presentation instruments, which are little bottles and jars, and the marketing instruments, because they have to produce a series of 3: bath salts, hair gel, and shampoo, or face cream, depends what you've got available. Put it into 3 containers, create a brand for their products, a design for their products, and then pitch their products in a 1-minute TV presentation. Wonderful language and chemistry at the same time. And I was fortunate to work with the lovely Dr. Lida Schön from Holland and take this project all around the world, working with young people. Here we are at Taipei 101, which was then the tallest building in the world, outside the supermarket at the foot of the building, with a lot of kids making all these cosmetics as the shoppers were going backwards and forwards. Great public interaction and public awareness for looking at what's important for young people, and that importance for young people is found in collaborative activities and talking about what they understand about what they're doing, explaining to others. That's great learning. In my own school, in Anglia School, we've adopted a lot of these ideas, albeit with very, very young children, some as young as 2. Here there's a group of children 4 and 5 working on invisible ink with lemon juice and contextualizing how fruit oxidizes when it's left for any length of time, gets warm, turns brown. You can see that in this little clip here. I'm going to stop that there. It actually comes out at the end and says, "I love angels," which was Laura's message around Valentine's Day. I think we did this activity, secret messages. And you can see that the instruments, the sequencing of activities, it's all very scientific. And these are very, very young children. And the procedure of doing this activity is ideal for developing their English. There's lots of repetition, very natural repetition. Of language and steps, and lots of repetition of the names of things, and it's hugely great fun for these kids to do. They're curious and they're absorbing language as they're doing these activities in a way which is quite magical. I think if you can create a curriculum out of these types of activities for young children learning through a foreign language. I mentioned that I chose some websites. And I've put these here. Obviously you'll be able to download this presentation and get these links, but just to mention, the Paper Planes website is a huge archive of great videos and paper-based instructions how to make these planes, produce a number of planes, test them in terms of length of flight, trajectory of flight, get kids to improve them. It's a great idea. Building challenges, again, what a great activity for children learning through a foreign language. And school partnerships projects, there are lots of European school partnerships projects that you might like to get involved in, and chemistry is a cultural enterprise through the International Union for Pure and Applied Chemistry. IUPAC has a lot of activities for schools, links through the curriculum. Chemistry for designing stamps, for example, is one of those. In short, what we've done, we've looked at exploring the curriculum, looking at resources, skills and language involved. We've identified an aspect of the context that fits your own situation for you and your curriculum and your students. It might be a skill, working with PowerPoints and presenting. It might be an area of grammar, the passive voice that appears in your curriculum. Do some science sequenced activities to contextualize the passive voice. It might be an aspect of general academic language in your curriculum, such as the economy. Find out an aspect of the curriculum, bring it into the language lesson, whether it's a large focus or a small focus. Make a start on your CLIL journey. I've referred to quite a few links. You can see here the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, Science Across the World, the National Curriculum website, which changes frequently, but you can, if that's not the exact one today, you can Google the UK National Curriculum to find the current site. FACTWorld has always got up-to-date materials and links for these discussions. The FACTWorld group, in Yahoo groups, you're very welcome to join 3,500 teachers there. and the Young Learners and Teens group in Yahoo groups as well. There's a lot of discussion about skills, concepts and procedures all the time in that group. I hope you've been motivated to find out more and get involved. Write to me at keithpkelly@yahoo.co.uk. Here it is, if I can help further. I've got to try and switch this off now.